All right, good morning to you, and a brand new week starts today. Hope you're ready for it. Looking forward to what's taking place, and I I'm going to be doing my part too. Got work to do, and busy writing and doing some things like that. We had a great weekend. I hope you did. It was Resurrection Day yesterday. Was good and amazing and rich. We listened to some great worship. Engaged in that, had a great time with just sharing about Christ in us and what that's about. And then we looked yesterday at our church. I don't know what you looked at yours, but we looked at the case for the resurrection. That if it didn't happen, dominoes fall, and we're still trapped in our sins, and we're still separated from God. All of those things without the resurrection. And so there's great proof that the resurrection happened. And we enjoyed looking at that yesterday. And then good time with family. All those who could come within our family showed up at our house. So my brother and his wife and his youngest daughter and her family were there. My sister and my brother-in-law were there. Brent and Abby and all the kiddos were there. And so we had a great just Resurrection Day lunch and hung out. And it was good to catch up. Nothing like family. And so we had a great day. And now we are in the book of Acts, chapter 27. We got two left. And man, chapter 27 is really just a nautical story of God's sovereignty and leadership of Paul. And I don't know how far we're going to get today. We're just meandering through it. It's a narrative. It's a story. We make observations as we go. But as far as theological treatises and things like that you would find in there, not so much. So we're just going to kind of meander our way through. I'm assuming it's going to take us a couple of days to get through 27, and then chapter 28. We'll take another maybe one or two, and then we'll reserve one day just to bring in from history what happened to Paul after that, because it's frustrating kind of just have it in upheaval. Like there he is. That it didn't end. We know how he died. Let's just see and what happened after his life there. So we're going to do that, kind of add our own little section to the book of Acts and see what happened to Paul. So let's just jump into the text. So you remember the deal. He's gone through three different kind of meetings now and trials, so to speak. And so Agrippa and Festus have decided, well, hey, the man's innocent. If he hadn't appealed to Caesar, we could just let him go. Well, they could still let him go because no one had sent a letter to Caesar Augustus to let them know about Paul, but they didn't. So they just wanted him out of their own life. So they put him on a ship, and he's sailing off to Rome, and there he'll meet. He's appealed to Caesar, so he'll go to Rome. That's like going to the Supreme Court of the whole world. That's where he's headed. And so we're just going to follow his journey because it's a fascinating journey to see what takes place. And really, you just see the leadership of Paul in this. And I think it's important just to see what happens when a godly man is put in difficult situations and how other people assess that. And so this is where we are. So in chapter 27, we're just going to read it and kind of wander through it. Let's just see how it says. So when it was decided that they were to sail to Italy, they handed over Paul and some other prisoners to a centurion named Julius. Now we know a centurion was a man who was over 100 soldiers. They were kind of prominent men. They were dotted everywhere. You see them all throughout the story of Jesus and of here as well. And so his name is Julius. He's of the imperial regiment. That means he's of the royal force. This is he most likely is heading back to Rome for whatever reason, but his men under him, they are within the walls of Caesar. So they're kind of the Secret Service, if you will, the bodyguards of Caesar. They're high detail security, men of great skill. That's who he's got under him. And so this is who's boarding the ship, right? Some other prisoners. Paul and some of the other prisoners were handed over to a centurion named Julius. So they've just got a handful of prisoners that are going that way anyway, and so Paul's just thrown in the lot. As far as we know, there's not a lot that people know about each other. He's just there. When we boarded the ship of Andromedum, which is that's another seaport just a little north of here, of where they are setting sail in Caesarea, they put to sea, intending to sail to ports along the coast of Asia. So these ships that they're in have you've seen them. They're not the sails that kind of line up and they move back and forth. These are the old pirate looking ships where the sails are pretty much just right to left kind of thing on the boat, port to starboard, and so they're just there and they're fixed, and so they're not meant to traverse the wind. They just kind of sail along, catch the wind as they go around the sea, and that's where it is. Ascending to sail to ports along the coast of Asia. They're just going along, either picking up more cargo, dropping cargo off, picking up passengers, dropping them off. That's what this boat is intended to do. And so it says they set sail to ports along the coast of Asia. Aristarchus, a Macedonian of Thessalonica, was with us. Now, with us implies that Luke is there and Paul. We're not sure who else. Aristarchus, you may remember, they picked him up. He's a Thessalonican. They picked him up at the riots in Ephesus. He was there when those riots took place, and Paul then fled. And then when Paul was he took 7 men with him, you remember, down to Jerusalem. Aristarchus was one of those. Later on, when we read in Colossians, you'll see where Aristarchus, Paul refers to him as a fellow prisoner of the Lord. So we can assume from this that somehow, whether he got caught up in that melee and all that took place in the temple with the Jewish man from Ephesus that recognized Aristarchus, also, although he wasn't in the temple there, Paul made sure that didn't happen. He must have gotten caught up in that or some other deed, because at some point he's a fellow prisoner with Paul. And so this is who's traveling with him. The next day we put in at Sidon, and Julius treated Paul kindly and allowed him to go to his friends to receive their care. So here you've got, so several things we have to surmise here. Either Paul and Julius knew each other over the course of time, as Paul was, you remember he was under house arrest there for 2 years, so he may have befriended him. He has let us know that even the Roman guard in the palace have heard the name of Jesus. So at some point, it is possible that a conversation was struck between these two. Either he's a complete stranger, Paul's just kind of handed over to him. Then this is an amazing deal that Paul, having been with a stranger, a soldier for that little bit of time, is given the freedom that Julius gives him, because you lose a prisoner, you lose your life. That's kind of how it went. So it would be amazing if that were so. Otherwise, it is the fact that they've had conversation, and he is one, however he heard, whether he came by to see Paul in the 2 years or whatever took place, or however that happened, Paul must have made an impression on him, shared the gospel with him. It's possible Julius is even a believer. We don't know any of these things. We're just but when we read this line, we have to ask ourselves, why did he treat Paul kindly? I mean, you're a soldier. You're hardened. You're a centurion. You used to just rough and tough. You got like the voice of a sergeant, right? You're just dogging everybody out and making sure men get where they have to go. But yet with Paul, you treat him kindly. Either he saw something in Paul, or he had previous encounters with Paul. At any rate, Paul had endeared himself to this man, whether fast or slow. And that seems to be a mark with Paul among everybody who he meets, except for the hostile Jews, right? Everyone else treats him sort of kindly. I mean, he was even in Jerusalem, he was put up in the king's palace, and he was, he had all of the care there, food and everything else. So this is the thing that strikes me. There is something about Paul. Do you remember the description I gave to you that history gives us, not that the Bible does, that Paul was a man of short stature, stubby legs like a mule, rather, bald-headed, a face that sometimes looks like an angel and sometimes like a man. When you hear that description, you think, here's a short, stocky, tough-looking man who in his face has that of an angel. You think there's a kind, when you think of somebody with an angelic face, it's not wow, their cheekbones are just right and their eyes set just the right way. When you think of an angelic face, there's a sweetness about it, right? I mean, you can see people and go, man, they look so sweet, and kind of angelic like. Well, it's not the bone structure. It's their resting face. It's how they see things. Paul apparently just had that face that was a face of contentment under pressure. He didn't get riled up. He just understood. He served a sovereign God, and there's a peace that's in his life. And I think when you see a face like his, that what you're seeing is a man at peace. That's how I surmise what they say here when he talked about what his face looked like that of an angel. But here he treats Paul kindly and allowed him to go to his friends to receive their care. So he lets him off the ship at the port. Hey, go check on your friends, let them kind of take care of you, give you whatever things you think you're going to need, whatever traveling things you need. Go get it. We're cool. Now, when he had put out to sea from there, we sailed along the northern coast of Cyprus because the winds were against us. So again, that ship wasn't meant to just sail off into the deep. It meant to hug the coastline. After sailing through the open sea of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we reached Myra in Lycia. There, the centurion found an Alexandrian ship sailing for Italy and put us on board. So you go from one ship now. So we got that. That's as far as that goes. Kind of like a bus transfer. Now we got to figure out, okay, what ship are we going to get everybody on to get to the next port? So this is a centurion's job with those under his care. Paul being one of those. He's like, okay, hey, we're off this boat. We're going to get on this Alexandrian ship sailing to Italy and put us on board. Sailing slowly for many days, with difficulty we arrived off Cnidus. Since the wind did not allow us to approach it, we sailed along the south side of Crete off Salmone. So they had to go to the leeward side of the island because of the storms. And so it's almost winter, and it was not a great time to sail. They're trying to get to Rome in a hurry because of the storm. And so it's a tense moment that you're picking up on here. And so, but not for Paul. Paul's relaxed. Paul's just, he's here for the ride. You know why? He's confident because he knows that God said, you're going to testify in Rome as well. You think Paul's concerned about his life here? Not at all. Because he knows I'm going to Rome. There's something confident about a man who has submitted himself to the word of God, who says, all right, I'm okay, right? I'm okay. Right? I may have a lot to think about. I got nothing to worry about. That's how Paul lived his life. Great truth that all of us could really grab a hold of. Anyway, it says this. So sailing slowly for many days, with difficulty we arrived at Cnidus. Since the wind did not allow us to approach it, we sailed along the south side of Crete off Salmone. With still more difficulty, we sailed along the coast and came to the place called Fair Havens near the city of Lasea. Now, they're kind of out there in the middle of nowhere. Fair Havens is a small little dot on the map, and so they're in this place called Fair Havens. Now, at this point, it's really anything but fair. It is a port to just stay in. It's safer than being out to sea, but that's not what they did. Paul tried to give them some advice. They didn't listen, and so let's just kind of see what takes place. By now, much time had passed, and the voyage was already dangerous, right? So too much time has gone by. Since the Day of Atonement was already over, so it's letting you kind of know what season that is. Winter's really right there upon them. Paul gave his advice, and I told them, men, I can see that this voyage is headed toward disaster and heavy loss, not only of the cargo and of the ship, but also our lives. He's like, hey, guys, I'm just warning you. I don't think it's a good idea that we do this, right? Now listen, Paul's already been in 3 shipwrecks that we know of. So it's not like he's like not used to this. He goes, another shipwreck, man. Okay, here we go. Right. So it's not now, I mean, you may think, well, he's not even a sailor. Yeah, but he's got wisdom. And he's also been through experience. And a man with wisdom and experience is somebody you should listen to. But these guys, no, they knew better. And so they're going to reap the results of that. So Paul says, man, I can see that this voyage is heading toward disaster and heavy loss. Look, man, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. It's going to be disastrous, and it's going to be a lot of heavy loss. Not only the cargo and the ship, but also our lives. Come on, we could lose our lives here. But the centurion paid attention to the captain and owner of the ship rather than to what Paul said. So here's the centurion who knows Paul, or at least, thinks, hey, I respect the guy. It's like, bro, you don't know. Nah, I'm going with the captain on this one. And so since the harbor was unsuitable to winter in, the majority decided to set sail from there, hoping somehow. That's a great plan. How you plan on getting there? Just hope somehow, right? I mean, I kind of like a little more direction than that. I mean, I'm a fly by the seat of my pants kind of guy, but if we're talking about life and death, I'd kind of like to just, hey, can we think through this? But not these guys. Hey, man, we're just, we're hoping somehow to reach Phoenix, a harbor on Crete, facing the southwest and northwest, and to winter there. Man, we're trying to make it one more port, and then we're just going to winter there. Now, not a great idea. So this isn't like some quick journey. This is, now Paul, they're going to have to, stay in one place for a season until some of the winter passes before they can get on to Rome. Paul knows that. It's going to be a while. Settle in, enjoy the ride. Let's just see what happens. Now, when the gentle south wind sprang up, they thought they achieved their purpose. So they're sitting there going, see, we told you, Paul, we got this, man. There's a good wind. We got a good wind. They weighed anchor, sailed. So you drop the anchor to kind of keep you from just when you've got sails like that. That anchor kind of dragging through the sand just kind of keeps you in a steady line, and that's kind of what they're doing here. So they weighed anchor and sailed along the shore of Crete. But before long, a fierce wind called the northeaster rushed down from the island. All right, and then that's the problem with the sea, man. You never know when that kind of stuff is going to all of a sudden just come up. I remember being in the Sea of Abaco on a sailboat, and we're traveling through, man. It looks great, and all of a sudden there's storms everywhere, and we're batting the hatches in the boat. We're getting rained in and on, and all of that, and man, it was a great time. But it's just amazing how fast that stuff can happen. That's what's going on here. So since the ship was caught and unable to head into the wind, we gave way to it and we're driven along. They're like, they couldn't get the boat turned, right? You don't turn the sail, you have to turn the whole boat. Well, they couldn't. So it's like that point, we just got to go with, we're at the mercy of the wind. This is where they are. So this ship is just going any way it wants to at this point. They still got the anchor down. They're trying to do as best they can. It says, since the ship was caught and unable to head into the wind, we gave way to it and were driven along. After running under the shelter of a little island called Cauda, we were barely able to get control of the skiff. That's the little boat. I don't know how little this one was on this boat, but it's the one that you would take to, your little dinghy, gets you in and out of the deal. And so if you're getting passengers off, it's got to be fairly big or it's going to take a long time to get them in and out. But that's what's going on. Now it says, after hoisting it up, they used ropes and tackle and girded the ship. So here's what they're doing, man. They're trying to get the little boat because normally it just drags along behind you, and like the wind, it's going to beat that thing up. And so they get it, they pull it up, and then they use it to tighten the ship. They'll take rope or whatever they've got, and they just kind of cinch that thing down to hold it together. Probably doesn't look like a pretty sight, but I guess you do what you do when the winds are coming. So you just want to give yourself whatever extra help you can to hold the ship together because those waves pounding against it is going to create a problem. And so this is what they do. After hoisting it up, they used rope and tackle and girded the ship. Fearing they would run aground on the Syrtis, that's like quicksand, the sand that's like a sandbar out there. They lowered the drift anchor, and this way they were driven along. So they got that drift anchor, and they're kind of steadying the boat, hoping to keep it from just kind of going everywhere, and there they go. Because we were being severely battered by the storm, they began to jettison the cargo the next day. So now the storm's getting so bad. You think Paul's over there kicked back going, man, I tried to tell you guys. You need some help with that boat. That cargo right there. You need some help with that, that crate. I'll help you throw it over. Now they're throwing over stuff because they're just trying to lighten the load and keep things as it is. On the third day, they threw the ship's tackle overboard. Now they're like, hey man, we can't even steer the ship anyway. Let's just get rid of this. Everything we can, let's just get rid of it. For many days, neither sun nor stars appeared, and the severe storm kept raging. Finally, all hope was fading that they would be saved. So now they're like, we think we're all gone. Since they had been without food for a long time, Here's Paul. Paul's a prisoner in the boat. Just get this, right? Paul then stood up among them and said, hey, man, you men should have followed my advice not to sail from Crete and sustain the damage and loss that you've got now, man. Look at all the crate back there that you tossed overboard. You can't even control the ship. You had to toss it overboard. So maybe you want to listen to me now. I'm going to encourage you, because there will be no loss of any of your lives, but only this. This ship's going down, but we're all going to be saved if you listen to me. For last night, an angel of God that I belong to and serve stood by me and said, don't be afraid, Paul. It is necessary for you to appear before Caesar. And indeed, God has graciously given you all those who are sailing with you. So take courage, men, because I believe God that it will be just the way it was told me. But we have to run aground on some island. He's like, guys, just listen to me. We're going to be all right. We'll come back to this tomorrow. But we got to hit ground. Quit doing all this crazy stuff. Let's just hit ground and hang on, right? So that's where we'll leave it, and we'll pick up the story tomorrow. And man, Lord bless you guys. Can't wait. I love this story. Can't wait to kind of just journey through it with you. Hope you have a great day. Lord willing, I'll see you in the morning.